Hey everybody, Mike Burkholder, Contra Costa. Today I have a very special guest, Sabina Zafar of the San Ramon City Council. And what's really cool about her is I've never actually met you yet. I came across you at the Women's March a few weeks ago, and you had a really great example of a bucket being full that will eventually lead you into getting involved with your community and pushing you into action. So I want to just thank you for that, because I think you inspired a lot of people.
Well, thank you for having me here today. It's, I feel honored to be here and talk about some of my stories.
Yeah, and you have a very incredible story. You're originally from Pakistan, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
When did you actually come over to the United States?
So I moved to the U.S. almost 23 years ago now.
Okay.
I moved because I got married, and we moved to Alabama because my then husband was doing his residency. And so I went to college at the University of South Alabama.
Okay.
That's where I had my degree in computer information sciences. Had both my kids in Alabama, lived there for 7 years. And then 7 years later, we moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. And we were in Scottsdale for about 3 years. And then life happened. My closest best friend lived in San Ramon. So I figured, where would I, move to be close to somebody like family and someone I'd known since I was 13. And that's when I moved to San Ramon in 2006. It was still half the town it is today. But that's where I really would say I raised my family. I had my first job in technology, and that's where I kind of built my life on my own.
Sure. And so I read something that it was an arranged marriage. And so how does that even work? Because I know a lot of people out here aren't really practice that, I guess.
Yeah. It was interesting, kind of, the way it works is my parents, my ex-husband now, his parents came over and said, we think, your daughter and our son would be a great match. He was starting his residency. He was a doctor in the U.S. He was starting his residency. And my parents came up to me and like, what do you think? We think this is a good guy. It's a good match. I'm like, as long as he lets me go to college.
So you negotiated.
I negotiated because at that time my mom was totally against me. My dream was to go to college in America. My mom was totally against it because she's like, I'm not sending you off on your own. And I'm like, okay, this works out.
Why didn't she want you to be by yourself? Were you kind of a wild child? Or?
No, I think she was just traditional, and
Okay.
she was concerned sending her daughter off to another country. Obviously, 10 years later, when my sister had to go, she had no issues because
Sure.
it's the world had changed for her. But that was, and I said, sure, he looks like a decent guy, and he, he was a nice guy, and we were two good people put together, and we worked it out for a good 11 years. Have two beautiful kids, 21 and 17 now. So it worked out.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of talk about this drive from Scottsdale to San Ramon, because did that kind of empower you? Did you do a lot of thinking? Did it kind of like hit the reset button for you?
It certainly did. So, with my background, I came from a family where I was always taken care of by my parents. And then they married me with somebody who took care of me. And divorce was not on the cards, right? Being on my own wasn't on the cards. But it happened, and life happens. And so when I decided to take that drive, it's a 14-hour drive from Arizona to San Ramon, it was probably the most empowering thing for me to do. When I put the kids in the car, my 4-year-old and 9-year-old, we put our hamster in the car, and we just drove, and I'm like, this is truly something that I am now, driving towards. And I'd never in my life, I think, been that empowered to make a decision all on my own. And so that was very empowering for me. And that kind of put me in the mindset of, hey, I can do this. And I think that's really where my journey began.
And so you get to San Ramon, you've now got into technology by that point. You have your degree. What was it about technology that really jump-started kind of bringing the community into technology?
So I would say my love for technology was probably when my uncle first bought me an IBM computer from this thrift shop in Pakistan when I was 10 years old. He's like, yeah, I found this. I thought, you might want to play with it, thinking nothing of it. And I started playing around with it, and I didn't realize how much impact that little IBM computer would have. I took some classes. My parents always wanted me to be a doctor. I took some, I went to high school, did biology and all of that stuff, did not like it. And I told them, there's no way I want to be a doctor. I'm just not passionate about it. I love math. And so without being mentored in some of the great things we have now for people, when I started college, even then I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I started a business degree. And 3/4 into it, I got completely bored. And I'm like, I want something more exciting and interesting. I took a couple of computer classes, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. It was just some passion inside me that drove me to take those classes. And 10 years later, I was grateful that I did do that degree, because even then I didn't think, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this because I love to do this. And 10 years later, when I was kind of on my own, and it's like, okay, if I'm going to stand on my own, that means financially, how am I going to take care of myself? And I got my first job, and I realized how much value my degree had in terms of finances.
What was that first paycheck like?
The first paycheck was amazing, because it was like, oh, wow, I'm worth that much?
Mine.
Mine. It's mine. Actually, people value what I do. Very empowering indeed. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was huge, but it was, it was like, okay, this is the money for
it's a start.
First time. It's a start, but something that I am capable of making. And what technology and having, pursuing that path really helped me was, it helped me stand on my feet.
Sure.
It helped me start my life. It helped me, give that life back to my kids, which, as a parent, every parent, our goal is to work for our kids. I think all of us just strive to give them a better life. And having that degree, coming from a culture which, like I said, was doesn't really prepare women.
Sure.
And then I realized it wasn't just that culture, it's any culture, doesn't really prepare women to stand on their own feet. And as time is moving, on, we are at a point where if we can financially take care of ourselves, then we're always going to be at somebody else's mercy. So for me, it was, how do I empower other girls, other women, to stand on their own feet, to make the choices that they want to make.
So right now you're at General Electric with the Technology Center of Excellence. And how did that job kind of transition to working with young women and getting them into coding? Because I know I wanted to go into coding. I took one class, and it was a Visual Basic.
Yeah.
And they said, do this, and I looked like a deer in headlights. I'm out.
Yeah.
And so how did you transition to working with young girls? Like,
GE has this philosophy of 20,000 by 2020, and that's the goal we were driving towards. And there are some really great programs, but, I wouldn't take credit for it, but women that were there before me, kind of had the same journey and have been working towards connecting women with technology, exposing them. And one of the key things that we realized with all the research that's been done is that middle school is that sweet spot where you either lose girls or you gain girls in technology. And how do you make sure that you align with programs that will empower these girls to think of technology as the norm, if they love that, if they pursue that? And when I thought about myself, it was exactly, around that same time when I discovered, what did I really love? Did I like technology? Did I like biology? Did I like something else? So helping these girls, one, connect with the women that, some of us that are older and some that are younger, the women that have already pursued these careers, to kind of exposing them to things was how I connected with, GE Girls program. So GE Girls is one program which we run a summer camp in partnership with Mills College and schools out of Oakland, so that we can, some of the girls that come from, not from San Ramon, where mostly these, girls do have access to technology, but girls actually who don't have access to technology or mentors that can show them the path. So we run that camp. There is another camp that we basically help out with, which is Girls Who Code. Again, another, that's another story for who started it and how she started it. But again, the women that have started and gotten behind these camps has been to empower women to financially stand on their own feet. And for me, it aligned with how it had empowered me and how I could give back now to empower these girls.
And what's it like seeing that aha moment with a young girl that understands coding, or she finishes a project, and what's that like to witness that whole transition from maybe I don't know anything about computers to, oh my gosh, I just programmed something?
It's pretty cool. I would say it's just to see and watch that, it's no rocket science, if you will, right? It's as normal as doing some English or, history or something else. And I may not be the best at history because I don't, there are history buffs that know that. But this girl, this is her passion, and she's able to figure it out or do this because she loves it. And so she may, not know about this now, but 10 years later, she's like, I knew exactly at that point that I loved it.
Is there any stories regarding that you could remember off the top of your head that really impacted you?
So there was one girl which she was in our part of our GE Girls camp. Again, at the beginning of the camp, we talked to them, we took a little survey and had a conversation, and they're like, yeah, we're just doing this class because our parents said we have to do this. It's a free camp, and so we're here to spend a week. And so
you're thinking great.
Yeah, that's what all kids, right? There's going to be free food, there's going to be bus rides to GE and all of that. And then as they went through the camp, they saw some of those things. 80% of the girls, I would even say 90, they're like, yeah, we never thought of, this is easy. This is like building Lego blocks, or this is like, doing something as simple as it's, because you teach them through art and you teach them through Lego building and other exercises, and you make it exciting and interesting for them. And they're like, yeah, this is not as hard as we thought it would be. This is actually pretty easy. So to hear that is exactly what the goal was, right?
Sure.
And then they're like, yeah, we'd like to work in a place like GE. You guys have video games here, and you guys have a kitchen full of food here. And so, it was kind of, we want that life, and how do we achieve that? And that's what most of the people do. Everybody around us is doing this. So it certainly, warms your heart and to see, oh, wow, it's, they have something to look forward to now.
That's incredible. I want to kind of transition over to politics. And you actually grew up, your dad was in politics, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was.
And what did you learn from him, and what did you observe, and what was either good or bad about it?
Yeah. So sometimes I think back to when I was 6 years old, and my dad was running for his city council in Pakistan. And that's just distinctly has stuck in my head. He went on to do other things in politics. But being a part of that journey was, every year that he was involved, the people we would talk to, get involved with, all of that, it kind of was part of my childhood. And then I moved to America when I was about 20 years old, and, life happened, college, then work, then kids, and all of that. And you kind of forget about it, right? You've built your own life, a different life, pursuing a career in technology. And then I met Eric Swalwell, actually. And when I met him, he reminded me, he was pretty young, but he reminded me of my dad, because my dad was very young when he got involved in public service. And I'm like, why am I not doing more to be part of this, community that I've lived here for so long now. And I said, okay, at some point I'll get involved. I'm busy now. The kids are young. I'm doing other things. But when you find your passion, it's something, things just start lining up. And after, my talking to Eric, I helped with his campaign. I said, Eric, take my son. I would love for him, because it was like, I want to give my son the same thing that I grew up with, because it is such an amazing experience to get to know people that are out of your inner circle, people that you've never met, to get exposed to your community the way you never. I feel like when you run for public office or when you're in politics, you get to meet so many people that you absolutely would never have met.
And it's issues you never think about either.
Exactly. It gives you such a big perspective on how things are done. So, and then, it all started coming back, like the journey that my dad had taken, some of the things that he'd been a part of, and, and how that kind of started lining up, if you will. That kind of started lining up, and as I got more involved in Eric's campaign, I'm like, okay, maybe at some point I'll run. And before I knew it, I was in the middle of it myself, and I learned a lot of things that I learned from him were, it is always about public service.
Sure.
If you get in there, it is always going to be listening to people. And he was here during my campaign, and
your dad was? Or?
He was. Okay. Yeah, he came to visit me for a month, and he kept going back to his days. He's retired now, not doing it, but he's like, yeah, this is how we did this, and this is exactly the same. And gave me some really good advice on how to listen to people, how to always put that at the forefront, and I just took that from him.
Yeah, and I, as someone that ran for office twice and lost, I'll never do it again. But I'm very thankful for that experience of just going through the process. Yeah. And I know you ran one time before. Yep. And didn't make it. What did you learn in that first campaign compared to the second one?
The big lesson, obviously, was name ID and getting your name out. It's local politics is so much about that. I was new in 2016, and so it took some time to get the name ID, build that, and it was really building upon that name ID, one. And second, what I learned is people don't want a long pitch. When you're knocking at the door, when you're talking to them, they love to hear your ideas and everything. But really, it's short and sweet. You knocked on my door. I would vote for you because you knocked on my door. And it's making it that 30-second pitch, right? So when I ran first, I was more about, these are the things I'm passionate about. These are the issues. This is what I want to solve for you. It works, but people, you lose people.
Sure.
So this time around, it was like, I'm running for office and I would love your vote. What can I do for you? And so that either started the conversation, or if people didn't have time, they're like, you knocked on our door, we'll vote for you. We'll take your card, we'll read up and ask you any questions. So I think that transition of, just the messaging should be short, clear, and let people ask you if they want to learn more versus you giving them a long pitch.
And so let's go back to election night, and you see that you won. What was that feeling like for you, having your dad in politics, having worked on Eric Swalwell's campaign, running the first time? What was that feeling like just for you, and then your kids seeing you?
Yeah. So bittersweet, it's all, it goes, and if, you've run, so you know how much hard work goes in it. Like the last few months, your life completely gets taken over by the campaign. And I was making phone calls and texting even 5 minutes before 8 o'clock. The polls closed. It was, if I've put everything in it. So certainly bittersweet, seeing that and, the results come in and all the hard work pay off. My kids thought it was surreal. They're like, Mom, you did it. Kind of, feeling. And I think they were very happy. I certainly could tell my daughter was very, very stressed, because even though she pretended, she wasn't. A lot of her friends, because they're high schoolers, were very much involved in the campaign. And so she was stressed. And, that night it was just like all that stress was relieved. And because we were all in this as a family,
Sure.
right? We were all, even more than just all in as a family, their friends and their extended families were part of this journey, because we'd just been a family for so long together.
Do you think it brought you all closer?
As a family?
Yeah.
I don't know if it brought us closer. We certainly got to know each other in different ways. I think I certainly earned my kids' respect a notch more, is what it is, when they're older.
They'll do more chores better.
Yeah.
So now you're elected, and, I always try to explain to people that running a campaign's kind of easy because you make a lot of promises. You get elected, now you got to count to 3, to get something passed. But you guys are dealing with something really interesting with San Ramon, of both new, and I hear this all the time, new San Ramon and old San Ramon. Yep. You've got some people saying that they're tired of old white dudes on the council. How are you able to, and I know it's through communication, but how are you able to try and bring everybody together, and why is that so important to you?
Very complicated problem to solve right now, especially in a city which is even physically divided into 2 cities by, a hill. So there's Windermere, which is all of, the new San Ramon, up, on the other side of council chambers, if you will, and then you have the West and South San Ramon. To build communities, it is very important to bring people together. And that is, you can do several ways, right? You can't force something, or I don't believe that having specific multicultural events will actually bring people together. I think bringing people together over common passions is what's going to bring people together, whether it's sports and, somebody loves to play golf on, both sides, or somebody loves to play badminton or table tennis and things like that.
Or protect open space like you did.
Or protect open space, right? I think that's one thing which combines all of San Ramon. Everybody wants the open space protected.
So why was the council trying to get rid of it before? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. Everyone wanted it except for council. It was kind of weird. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No. This is, San Ramon's identity is the open spaces, the hiking trails, our schools as well. And those are all common passions for everybody. But how do we bring the community together? I am still brainstorming, thinking about things that we can do. How do we do something big bang?
Sure.
Like, fireworks is one I'd personally love to have back. But there's,
And San Ramon's not the only community that struggles with this. Antioch's divided in half because of the freeway.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's divided in half. Brentwood, even same thing with San Ramon. You have the hillside over there on by Heritage High School. So, and even Contra Costa as a whole is divided based on geography.
Yep.
So, it's a question that's impossible to answer because every community is different on the micro, and then in the macro, it's countywide. The Board of Supervisors, I mean, they are just it's like the have and have not sometimes.
Yeah. And then the thing about San Ramon is, as well, as I walked all these neighborhoods, what I noticed was that each neighborhood was unique. And then it kind of had a strip mall which connected that neighborhood.
Sure.
So my goal is, how do we first connect the neighborhoods with identities? So people are like, oh, we belong in this neighborhood, and nothing wrong with that, right? San Francisco has the different neighborhoods and different identities of those neighborhoods. And so how do we become first kind of neighborhood centric? And then as a city, we're like, oh yeah, I want to go have a coffee in that neighborhood.
Sure. Something
like that. So it's a challenge, but I'm so passionate about it that, I hope to solve it in the next 4 years. And a lot of it is going to be with community input, with, working with other council members. They all want to solve this.
Yeah.
They're all trying to figure it out. There's no resistance to solving this. I think we're all, on the same wavelength, if you will, that we want to, bring the community together. The other challenge with San Ramon and some of the actually Dublin and other communities also have, we have a high immigration of first-generation immigrants. I being one of, the first-generation immigrants, and there is a cultural difference. Some cultures are much more closed and some cultures are much more open. So how do we kind of, bring them around an American culture of immigrants, if you will?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I appreciate about you is just kind of reading some of the background on how involved you are in the community. And I'm not going to go through your whole list of organizations you're with because it's a very long list. But what I can appreciate about you is that you are all about diversity in terms of I don't want to say not playing favorites because that's not what I mean, but you try and include everybody,
Yep.
regardless of, socioeconomic, or if it's a color thing or ethnicity thing. I mean, you really are trying to get everybody involved at any level, any issue. And that's really cool because there's people that say that, but they don't actually do it. And I think you're doing it.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I've at least trying my best to do it and make it more inclusive. And, hopefully that effect will then multiply with other people. So that's my goal.
You're doing it.
Thank you.
And so I know we got a few minutes left before you got to go to another event, but I want to kind of bring up the whole schools because, again, at the Women's March, you told this really interesting story about school shootings, which is a terrible thing, but you're working to raise awareness, build community through both the city, the school district working together. You want kids to feel safe. How did that whole, filling up your bucket to where it moved you into action?
I think, and it's all of us, right, where you keep seeing something, you keep observing something. And for me, it was, like I mentioned, at the Women's March, thinking back to that first Columbine shooting where my own child was 1 year old, and just hearing about it again and again, and almost to a point where why are we becoming numb to this? Because this is affecting us every day.
Sure.
This shooting happens. The first thing any parent thinks about is, hopefully, it wasn't our school. It wasn't in Antioch and San Ramon or anywhere, right? Anytime a shooting story comes up, the first thing is, hopefully, it wasn't our school.
Well, and you just had that in Concord, too.
Yep.
But it was technically at the park.
Yep. And
scary.
And in San Ramon, we've had threats, right? San Ramon, we've had threats twice last year in Cal High, where they've had to shut down the schools, where we've had to talk to kids, and they're scared. Things like, what the kids are doing now, exercises, lockdown exercises. When you think about it, you're like, how did this and when did this start happening? Because, we don't remember that happening.
No.
And schools are almost like jails, if you will. They've got, they're closed off. The schools were about community. You could go in and out and all of that. Now there's rails around schools and they're locked down and you have to have special permission and you can't enter. And so all of these things almost also create fear, within the students and the kids. And so my, that bucket analogy, it was like every time there was another shooting, it was like, when is the next one going? You're just scared. Oh no, this is happening. This is happening. This is happening. And then by the time we reached Parkland, I'm like, what is going on? Why are we not doing anything? We think we're safe. We think nothing's going to happen, but you don't know when or what might happen. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I have to do something. I just can't sit around, listen to the radio, listen to the news, I'll talk to my friends, say, oh, how scared. We have to actually go out and show the kids we care, and we have to start doing something actionable around it. And the first thing is start talking about it. A sleepy town like San Ramon can't just sit and pretend that it's not happening, because it could happen. And then you start talking to the kids, and they have stories and stories of how scared they are. Even, some random child is saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to shoot you up once I get it." Some kids say those things, and I was just blown away by, when these kids started telling their stories. And for me, it's very important that we do work with the school district. We work as, a coalition between council and school board, because our parents are there for the schools. We are known to be a city which has great schools. And if anything shakes up the schools, anything happens in the schools, then the city is going to be on point, and people will ask the council, why were you not more aware or more involved in this?
And I think that's something that even Eric Swalwell is trying to work on and raise awareness. And the problem is that at a national level, I don't want to say they're not having a serious conversation about it, but it's so politicized that really nothing's ever really going to truly get done, and these incidents are going to keep happening. I don't even want to go into the national debate, because neither you or I are going to win that. But maybe I'll ask Eric if he comes on.
Yeah.
But it's a very complex topic that, we could spend all day on it.
Yeah.
But
the more of us, even at the local level, talk about it and support our representatives out on the national level, the more strength we give them. I think just this topic having been talked about now and not shying away from it. Somebody will say, what can you do at the city level? Maybe I can influence my, elected federal politicians and say, we have to have common sense gun laws. We have to think about student safety, and it shouldn't happen in a country like America. It just shouldn't happen here.
So let's end this on a positive note for the city of San Ramon. You guys just, I think I read you opened a new center, or what's that whole thing?
Yeah, so Bishop Ranch actually built a new city center, which I'm very excited about, because one, it is by a world famous architect, and people either love it or hate it, because obviously that's art. But really, it is one of the first, if you will, truly gathering places that's built in San Ramon, which is bringing people together. It's lit up the city. It's, you get off 680 onto Bollinger, and it's really, you're like, oh, we've come somewhere. It's bringing the community together. It's, one of those spaces where you have, where they're aspiring to do, build a work, live, play kind of lifestyle. So I'm excited about it, because I really think San Ramon needed something like this. And this is also going to set the bar for other places to say, we want to come at par with what the city center is doing right now. So come and visit the San Ramon City Center. We have theater there. We've got a gym now. Restaurants are still opening, and they're going to continue to open. And if you have kids, they have this green strip with Lego blocks in there, and kids love to jump, then play with those Lego blocks. There's kind of a water feature where you can put on some, boots and go run around in the water. So, just come and eat or just hang out at the city center.
And so it's bringing new and old together.
It is certainly bringing new and old together.
Well, Sabina, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I know that nice drive from San Ramon to Antioch is a little easier on a weekend, and now you're headed back over to Dublin for an event with Eric Swalwell. And just keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate watching you from afar. Hopefully I get to see you in action at some of these bigger events. So, again, thank you so much, and keep up the strong work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you inviting me over today.
This is Mike Burkholder, Contra Costa Today. Please like, subscribe, follow. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.